Hello, folks, yes, and welcome to Shortgrass, your Kildare Nationalist sports podcast. It's week 4. I'm Pat Costello, and over the next hour or so, we'll dissect and bisect anything that's sport in the county with particular emphasis on Kildare GAA. Well, let's cut the intro short this week because we have an awful lot to go through. We have McNally, as usual, the regional sports editor of the Kildare Nationalist. We have Richard Commins, reporter and contributor to the Kildare Nationalist, and Tommy O'Connell from the Kildare Fan 2025 X platform, and of course a contributor as well, particularly in regard to graphics to the Kildare Nationals. Good afternoon, good day, good evening, good morning, whatever it is in your country, lads. How are things? We're all ready for a very, very busy week, and we've had a very busy week on and off the pitch. I suppose we start with off the pitch because we've had a number of announcements, including, I suppose, the appointment of Davy to the Bryan Flanagan backroom team. Richard, you did a very, very good piece online, and I'm in the Kildare Nationals this week on that particular appointment.
Yeah, interesting appointment for sure from Bryan Flanagan. I suppose the initial reaction was, "Oh my God, how's that going to work?" I think for most people, but as you kind of stood back and had a look at it, I think it's a brave move by Flano, who was obviously the instigator of it, approached Davy when he became available. I think it's a brave move, but a personality with that strength of personality into his management team. But I think he's someone who obviously comes with a huge knowledge of Kildare football. Someone who has been in and around Division 1 and Division 2 and the Sam Maguire Cup for the last 3 years, and there's not many people like that who are around. I think he obviously knows a lot of the players, particularly the 2018 setup, but also he's managed Sarsfield since then as well. So I think there's a huge amount of positives, and I think it's a brave move for Davy and a great move from Davy to do that as well. Obviously, he wanted that number one job at different points of time in the past, didn't get it. Has obviously been an inter-county manager now with Wicklow and Roscommon. So, he's putting any ego aside and going in with Flanagan to see what he can do for Kildare football. And, whilst, some people may have some reservations about how the last couple of years went in Roscommon, I think Kildare would have struggled to get anyone of that sort of caliber with that sort of knowledge and, I suppose, motivation to help Kildare football.
Yeah, indeed. And it seems, Jared, to be something that's becoming more common now, because we hear this morning that McEntee has gone in with Brannigan to Monaghan, and we've had others involved with Armagh and Galway and indeed down in Kerry as well.
Absolutely. I mean, it's such a huge job, the modern day intercounty senior team manager, and how people can combine that job with their own regular workday, is beyond me sometimes. So definitely having somebody of the experience and knowledge of Davy coming into the management team can only be a good thing, of course, as long as they find a way to work together. And obviously they would have teased that out themselves, and Bryan Flanagan wouldn't be bringing anybody in if he didn't think they were going to be a huge addition. And the fact that both himself and Davy are willing to see this partnership as something as a positive, I think suggests that it is going to be something that's going to really drive Kildare forward. And I think it's hugely exciting to have the two men who I suppose were responsible for bringing up the only All-Ireland titles we've seen in Kildare at any kind of senior level or under 20 level, of course, but in the last 50 or 60 years, to have them working together now, and there's still some of Davy's group still left over, and maybe possibly more of them to come in, and obviously Brian's teams are there as well. So yeah, I think it's hugely exciting, but great credit, I think, has to go to Bryan Flanagan, and I'd say something similar maybe about Mick Mullen when it comes to talk about the appointment of Brian Murphy. To see two heads of Kildare GAA go out and appoint really strong personalities for key roles says an awful lot about their leadership, I think, and they deserve great credit for it. They're not backing away, they're not trying to run things themselves, and they're more than willing to take other expertise on board, and I think it's two hugely exciting appointments for Kildare GAA that we've had in the last week.
And Tommy, obviously Davy was a popular figure with Kildare fans, and this would be a popular appointment, I expect.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. From anybody I've been speaking to, they are excited because they know what Davy brings and his personality, and even to bring that bit of steel into the setup. But even as you were saying, Just to compare it to McEntee as well, you know, it is interesting that these big characters are taking these roles in county jobs. Any county job that became available in the past few months around the county, outside of obviously the really big ones, Davy came into my mind. Would Davy fit in here at Westmeath or the Commins or any of these? Would he fit in? Because I thought he would have been at the top of these lists, and maybe he was. Maybe he wasn't ready for something like that. But to see him coming into Kildare is exciting, and his knowledge that he's going to bring of not only the players that are in there, but the players that are playing club football in the county at the moment, that a lot of people might have even forgotten about, that might have been involved in those teams 6-7 years ago. That Davy might look to, you know, that he knows more about them, and he might be the person to drag these lads, you know, out of the wilderness. But again, as Ger said as well about Mick Mullen and just the Kildare County Board and these appointments that are happening, I mean, it definitely goes to show you that there's no locked doors in the new St. Conleth's Park. I mean, there's opportunities there for people to come back in. A lot of people might have thought, like myself, might have thought, is it Davy might get a chance further down the line. Brian Murphy might come back in some capacity down the line. But these doors aren't slammed shut for these lads. You know, they're coming back in. And they're coming back in roles that nobody really expected. So, yeah, I think exciting times for Kildare on and off the field.
Yeah, it certainly is. And moving swiftly along then to something that there is a God. I've been crying out for something like this for the last number of years, and that's a football development committee in Kildare, because we do have an excellent hurling development committee, and I think football needs one. And indeed, that particular announcement was made, Richard, on Tuesday night at the county board meeting, one of many announcements, and you might go through there what it said about Brian Murphy. I think we have it up on the screen at the moment.
Yeah, just echo Ger's thoughts as well. You know, there was a real parallel with Brian Flanagan's appointment of Davy Burke here with this appointment by Mick Mullen, and he was clearly delighted to be announcing this. He was like, you know, Father Christmas on on Christmas morning there on when was it, on Tuesday night. So essentially the role, to my mind, and you know, I didn't have a huge chance to have a chat with them about it afterwards. We did confirm a couple of things. It's essentially similar to the John Burke role in terms of the hurling development committee, and the plan is for Bryan to come in, and I think there's already been a start made on a strategic plan for the development of football, and the plan is that he will work closely with Mick Mullen and Louise Conlon in terms of refining and fully developing that strategic plan. And then my understanding is he would be responsible for driving the implementation of that plan going forward. So it's not just that he's going to be looking after the development squads in Hawkfield or anything like that. It is a broader role looking at all aspects of the development of football in Kildare, both club and inter-county.
Well, it certainly has worked in hurling, as we say, and Brian Murphy has, you know, he's been involved, as we all know, at underage level and very successful, and many of the players who are now at senior level have come through his I suppose, tutorage at some stage over the last number of years. So really, Jared, a great appointment for all sides, both for Brian and indeed for the county board.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Brian Murphy got a lot of attention, rightly so, when he had that run at the chairman position there at the end of last year, leading into the convention. But this role probably strikes me as something that he'd be even more suitable for. There's a lot involved in a chairman's role that maybe Brian would have got bogged down in. But this, you know, would appear to me what Brian's expertise is, really leading this. He was involved previously in putting together a plan, I think, for development squads, probably over a decade ago now, well over a decade ago, maybe the late kind of the noughties it was, I think, when he was first involved in minor squads. And it was no coincidence that Kildare went on to enjoy a real golden era of underage football in the next kind of 5 or 6 years leading into the early part of the teens, as it was. So I think, Brian's a fantastic person. You know, Kildare, all the kind of people that we've had to come into the county down through the years to have Brian land in the county. Obviously, Richard, you still have the picture there of his famous goal back in '98, and you know, he's continued to be an incredible driving force for Kildare GAA long after he's hung up his boots, and I'm sure he's looking forward to getting stuck into this role, and I can't wait to see what he can do over the next couple of years, because he's a great man to have involved.
Yeah, well, I expect we will have him on the podcast very, very shortly over the next number of weeks, when he I suppose, gets in there, because we can speculate as to what he might be doing, but the man himself will tell us. We'll have him on the podcast one of these days. And indeed, I suppose, Tommy, from a fan's point of view, he was very popular with the fans, especially from '98 onwards.
Oh yeah, absolutely. From a fan's point of view, we knew him as a player, and obviously that he was involved in a lot of kind of underage setups and that structure. But at the time he was going for chairman as well, a lot of us got to see his manifesto, and we could see his vision for the future for Kildare football. And it wasn't, he obviously, a large part of it was the administration of Kildare and his vision for Kildare for the years going forward. But you could see he still had that in his head, that he was so interested still in the grassroots, building the game and bringing players through. Are we taking a bit of that manifesto now and bringing it forward into this role? So we'll see how he goes.
Yeah, we did, I suppose, reach out to a lot of people over the last number of days, asked for questions for the podcast, and I have to say, people really responded. We would have to have I suppose, a 24-hour podcast if we want to answer all the questions. But one of the questions, I think, was, what would Bryan's role be? Which I said, look, we'll get Bryan on to do that. And they also wondered whether he would be involved at club level as well. And I think, as you say, Richard, it will echo John Burke, and certainly the hurling committee was very much involved at club level as well. So we will have Bryan on one of these days, and we will have a great chat with him, because when Bryan starts talking, well, he never stops talking, I suppose. Talking about the county board, Richard, a few more ratifications. I suppose everything is in place then for the 2026 inter-county season. I think we've all managers are now appointed.
Yeah, all managers appointed. So I suppose the additional information we got, I think it was the first time we'd heard Tommy Constantine's management team for the under 17s in football next year. So that's going to be James Hannafin, Ballyteague, Carl Ennis, former Kildare player of Maynooth, and the third one is Conor Mellett from Naas. So that's going to be that team. There was a question around Niall Cronin's team from the floor, but Mick Mullen was reluctant, I think, to divulge that at this point in time, given that, as he said himself, a number of those are involved with clubs at the moment. So he didn't want to, I suppose, derail their current responsibilities by announcing that at that particular point in time. All were ratified, all of those positions. There were questions from the floor about Niall Cronin's appointment in particular, and questions to the chair as to whether his I suppose term with the minors was seen as successful. And to be fair to Mick, he did say, yeah, we didn't win a Leinster. We would have liked to have won a Leinster, but we did win 2 Paul McGurk Cups, and the trophy was there behind him, as he said it, in St. Conrad's Park on Tuesday night. So, a few questions on the Niall Cronin appointment, but it was ratified, obviously.
Well, I suppose it's all down to the is it a development squad, or is it a squad that has to win Leinster, whatever? So that debate will continue. But congratulations to all of those who have been ratified by the Kildare County Board on Tuesday night, and we wish them all very well. And over the next few months, we will have a chance to perhaps talk to someone, or maybe all of them, on the sports podcast, Shortgrass Sports podcast. We get it out. Anything more of significance at the county board? Finance still going well, Richard?
Yeah, I mean, Alan Dunny is not one to just sing about the finances from the rafters. There's always costs coming towards the end of the year, and what have you. So anytime the numbers are good, there's always a rider put in there. But the numbers were good. I think it was a 2.3 million revenue and costs of 1.65 or something around there from the top of my head. So things going pretty well from that perspective. There was a bit of debate, a few questions from the floor about the revenue and the revenue as in the revenue authorities, and what they're doing in terms of reviewing the GAA and various other county boards at the moment. Again, Alan was I think fairly comfortable that Kildare were in a reasonably good position from that perspective. There may need to be some provision made for tax liabilities at the end of the year, but he felt that they were in a position to be able to manage that and deal with it, and that things are in good shape and clean going forward. So so financially, all was pretty good.
Yeah, you can read all about it in next Tuesday's Kildare Nationalist, which its report will be on there. And in fairness to Alan Dunny, he has been comfortable from the first time that the revenue issue was, I suppose, raised. And Alan has been very, very comfortable in regards to what Kildare had done up to now. So
I think some of the clubs were a bit concerned as to, how does this leave them, and how are the revenue going to get their teeth into clubs affairs going forward. So I think that's a valid concern from the clubs, and not necessarily something the county board can deal with, because the clubs are each set up separately themselves and each have different types of operations. Some run bars, etc., some don't, so I think it's something clubs will no doubt are discussing amongst themselves as well at the moment.
Of course. The last piece of off-the-field activity, I suppose, was the disappointing news that Shane Shorty McCormack had stepped down as manager of the Meath Ladies team, Ger. That was a bit of a surprise, but he put out a very, very, very good statement and to explain his decision to step down, because he had done very well with Meath. We were in the doldrums before he came back.
Yeah, absolutely. He was kind of they obviously had their peak of back-to-back All-Irelands, had a bit of a step back after that, lost a couple of players. I think his first year last year he got to a quarter final, and then this year got to a Leinster final and an All-Ireland final. Probably didn't play as they would have liked, particularly in the first half of that All-Ireland final, but to got that far and had a great victory over the reigning champions Kerry as well on the way was a superb win. And Shorty can hold his head up high, and his CV has certainly been bolstered by his time in Meath. I think he said he wants a bit of a break now. We obviously have the Armagh job leading into that Meath job as well, so he's probably on the go for 4 or 5 years. So maybe he'll take a break, and who knows, maybe we'll see him possibly manage his native county maybe someday. I'm sure he would like that opportunity maybe down the line. Not to say anything about Pat Sullivan, of course, at the moment, who's the man in the hot seat and very much preparing for next season. But maybe it's something that we'll see in the future, because Shane has built up a huge kind of bank of knowledge there and bank of experience there, and very high level experience. So no doubt that could be useful to Kildare in the future. But for now, I'm sure he'll enjoy just putting the feet up and maybe taking in some of the Alan Wood games over the next 2 weeks before the end of the championship.
Maybe he might go in as number 2 to Pat Sullivan. Oh, no, don't go there.
That seems to be the trend, though.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on.